Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. Welcome to my channel. My name is Micah. Welcome to Everyday May. And today we are talking cool toned eyeshadow palettes 2.0 because I already did a cool toned palette video, I think 2.5 years ago. In that video I mentioned 4 different cool toned eyeshadow palettes. And as far as I know, all of these are still on the market, so you could still get these. So I'll just hold them up real quickly. I won't be featuring these in this video, but in that video, I talk about the Zoeva on Taupe. I talk about Lorac Pro 2. I talk about Naked 2 by Urban Decay. And I talk about Chocolate Bonbons by Too Faced. Those are all like very neutral eyeshadow palettes that are very much known for being cool toned. But of course, since then, other cool tone palettes have been released, and I've been trying some of them out. And that's why we're going to be talking about those newer additions today. So in today's video, what are we going to be featuring? I have the Anastasia Beverly Hills Sultry palette for you. I have the Fame palette by Colourpop. I have Milani's Soft and Sultry, which is very blinding, and I have a Zoeva palette again. This is the Icy Palette. Looks really, really stunning there. So I just wanted to feature those 4 here. I tried looking for other cool tone palettes, but my issue with a lot of things that people claim are cool toned just aren't all that cool toned. And especially with me, like preferring cool tone shadows, for me, it's always fun to find something that is a bit more cool toned. I'm not featuring the Urban Decay Naked Reloaded in here. A lot of people are comparing that to the Sultry palette, mainly because of this Bloom shade here, because the Urban Decay also has one of those peachy tones. But I have to say that with the Urban Decay, once I put that on my eyes, it translates a lot more warm than this does. So to me, it's not a dupe in that sense. It is definitely more in the same vein of the original Naked palette that it's replacing, of course. And even though it has a couple of shades that may look similar to this, I feel that the Sultry palette is definitely more cool too. So now that I'm holding this up anyways, let's just chat Anastasia Sultry for a minute. So this was limited edition for Christmas 2018. You can still get this, especially if you look at the official Anastasia website. There you can get most products even if they have already been discontinued. This palette has quite a few shimmers in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 are matte, and then there are 7 shimmers. So it's like an equal 50-50 split there. It has a couple of very, very stunning shimmer shades. It has this here, this is called Cinder, and that's a very nice cool toned, like bronzy brown, but it's got a cool undertone. Cyborg, which is a silver without being a silver, but also Ember and Teak are what you would expect to be warm tones, but they don't pull as warm on my complexion personally. So you get a good split of shimmers and mattes, you get a black, you get a dark brown. In short, you seem to be getting everything you need in this palette. And of course, whoops, let me open it up again. You have this pop of peachy pink to sort of make for a fun pop of color. Milani Soft and Sultry then, because that's the next one that I have right here. This is a palette at the drugstore, but it is up there in price when it comes to drugstore pricing. Over here, these retail for 25 euros, which, to be quite honest, that's much more expensive than a Maybelline or a L'Oreal palette would go for over here. I believe in the States these are $25, so then it's a little bit better. But in terms of drugstore, it is at the higher end of drugstore. But I have to say, I love this. This is a really, really nice palette. It's got really nice quality. You get 3 quads, pretty much. With the darker shades here, you've got some shimmers, you've got some transitions, and then your lighter shades as well. You get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 mattes, 1 satin, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 shimmers. So the matte to shimmer ratio in here skewers in favor of the mattes, which I know a lot of people prefer. So this may be a good one if you like mattes and you like neutrals. If you like something super neutral, because the Milani can be a little bit smoky sometimes, but the Fame palette by Colourpop, this is what it looks like. This is probably one of the best all neutral, cool tone palettes to have come out on the market in recent years. Not many brands do anything like this anymore. You do get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 mattes, and there are 8 shimmers in here as well. So again, that 50-50 split, because this has 16 pans. And as you can see, everything is very sort of brown toned, but you get a bit of a purpley shade here, and then you have a few of these like peachy shades. This, in certain lights, Blasé has a bit of a greenish undertone, but on the skin I feel it doesn't translate very well. But overall, this is the most neutral out of all of them. The Zoeva Icy Palette, I was just completely drawn in by this packaging. It's like a very dusty rose sort of color, and then it has this gold print on it. It's very sort of steampunk almost. And I was thinking the other day, like, we could use a steampunk inspired makeup collection. I would very much love something like that. And this is one that I used just recently. Actually, I made sure to have used all of these enough to be able to film this video. And this is what the palette looks like. And you might think, it's got a red. How is that going to be cool toned? Well, in this palette, apart from the red, everything in here is more cool toned, but it's much more colorful. So if you're looking for a wearable, colorful eyeshadow palette that is cool toned, then this might be it. Because apart from the red, nothing in here is very warm. So let's talk a little bit about price point, comparisons, formula, all that jazz. So the Sultry palette, I have to say, out of all of these, and that's a gripe that I just described, I don't think this is the coolest toned. This isn't the most cool toned palette on the market by any means. It definitely has some good cool tones, and it pulls more cool toned, etc, etc. I definitely think that the main reason why that happens is because of this dark brown dystopian. That is a brown with a cooler undertone. It's not too red, it's a bit more cool toned, and that makes everything quite cool toned in here, which has to be your cup of tea, of course. But then, for instance, you have a shade like Birch right here, which is a very pretty transition shade, don't get me wrong, but it's a bit more warm toned, and just going in with a straight up gray. So for me, if this would have been more cool toned, it probably would have worked a little bit better. Out of all of these, the Anastasia is of course the most expensive. This was also a little bit more up there in price. Apparently something in the formula changed, or Anastasia is just upping their prices. I'm not sure, but I believe in the States this is 45, if I'm not mistaken, dollars. Over here, this retails for over 60 euros, which is quite outrageous to me. I got this in the Black Friday sale, so I think I paid around 45 euros for it, which to me is a fair price point. So I would only recommend getting this if you can find it on a deal. I already mentioned really liking Cyborg and also this Cinder shade. Dystopian I like Ember. Rose Quartz is really nice. Steampunk is a nice gold, but it's not too yellow. So again, it has that more, well, a gold cannot really be super cool toned, but this is almost a little bit with a hint of green in there. Pearl is nice, Fresh is nice. Overall, this is a neutral palette I can definitely get down with. I like the Anastasia formula as well. I think it's a really, really good formula to work with. And I think that since the Norvina came out, they've definitely been doing a good thing with their formula. With this, I've had no issues with blending. Goes on like a dream. The shimmers in here, like with the Norvina, are a little chunkier, especially Pearl and Cyborg as well. You can, especially Pearl, you can see like the flecks in there, but if you apply it with a red brush or with your finger, you will have no issues. And yeah, it's got a black, which I know a lot of people prefer. And with a cool tone palette, and especially if you want to go something a little bit more smoky, then a black can, of course, be very handy. So that would be the Anastasia. Milani Soft and Sultry, I already mentioned that this is 25 euros, which I think is a little bit expensive for drugstore, but I don't think it's expensive. Ooh, let me turn the palette so you can see. I don't think this is expensive for the quality you get in here. I definitely think that in terms of formula, this is stunning. Milani do some really, really good eyeshadows. I also like their smaller, like Elements palettes that they did before this. These look really nice. They are very easily laid out as well, because you get those 3 quads that you can just use. And when I was doing looks with this, yes, I was just using the quads. The only shades that I go into is the top 3 I tend to use with every look, because you have a shimmery, like inner corner champagne shade. You got a good like satiny matte brow bone shade, and this is a really nice blending shade for my skin tone anyways. So I can just use the quads and then use these as like basics to work around with. I do have to say that again, like the Anastasia, I don't feel that this is very, very cool toned. So it's definitely cool toned if you put it next to warm tone palettes. Let me put that forward. But is this cool toned when you put it next to a truly cool tone palette? On me, especially this looks really cool in the pan, but I feel that on me, it looks a little bit warm. I have the same thing with some of the Anastasia shades. I have the same thing with the Naked Reloaded shade that everybody's saying is very cool toned. This does not pull super cool toned on me, but I do really like the quality of this, especially this shade here in the middle. And also, yeah, this one right here. These two pair really nicely. So I did a look where I put this all over the lid and then this in the center, and that looked stunning. And that was the most cool tone look that I got out of this palette. This is pretty warm, just saying. We have the Colourpop palette. Colourpop palettes are, of course, also quite affordable. I don't remember how much this was. Are these 16 or 20? I think this is 20 if it's 16 pans. And the Colourpop formula is again one that I really, really enjoy. I think it has to be one of my favorite affordable price points, but I mainly have them in singles, not as palettes, because I feel that Colourpop has a tendency to repeat too many shades between palettes, but also inside the palette. Because the issue I have with this palette, even though you get 16 pans, it's really, really nice, neutral, and very cool toned. Out of all of this, this is the most cool tone that I have to show you. The problem with this palette is that Posh, Debutante, those two look very similar on the lid. The same goes for the Most and Dazzle. The only difference between these really is like just a little bit of a hint of lightness, perhaps a different type of shimmer, but the undertone is very much the same. So I feel that these are just interchangeable, and these two are too. These two mattes don't really make much of a difference for me either. I prefer Clubhouse over Razzle, but these three crease shades, they are just not that different. My favorite shade in here has to be Extravaganza. That's a little bit of a duochrome, and I also really like Debutante as well. You do get a nice pink, which I sometimes like in my inner corner, and I like that this has a purple undertone. These two, again, on me, these two dark shades, look exactly the same. So for me, I prefer it if I can get a lot of different looks out of a palette, and this just isn't the versatility that I'm looking for in a cool tone palette. However, if you're looking for something super neutral and you are that person who just uses up shadows real quickly, then this is great because you will always have a backup right in the same palette. Just saying. And last but not least, Zoeva. Zoeva's price point is also like the €22 mark. I got this off of their official website. I haven't seen this anywhere else. I believe it was released last summer, but it's one of those things, like with Zoeva, you just never know when they've released new stuff, I feel. But this one, I spotted it on their website, and I really, really enjoy this. You get a navy blue. This green shade is like that duochrome, like a brown shifting to a blue and a green, a bit like MAC's Blue Brown. It's really, really stunning. And it's a shade that goes really well with the red, but it's a shade that also goes really well with the cool tones in here, which is why I'm saying this is the only shade that's truly warm. And I found that as I applied it with a brush, it has a bit of a pinky undertone. So when you sheer it out, it actually isn't as red, at least on my skin tone. I think if you have a different skin tone to mine, that this may look a little bit more warm toned, but it's not a coppery red or an orange toned red. It's much more of like a pinky red, which is why it also goes with some of these other shades. One thing I love about this palette is these pinky purples down the bottom. Those are just stunning. I did a full look with everything that's here on the bottom of the palette, and I just absolutely loved it. That's what this palette really, really does well. Another thing this palette does really well is duochromes. I've mentioned it before, Zoeva do really nice duochromes. Not enough people give them credit, to be quite honest. This one right here, this is Idealized. This is like a pink with like a blue flash. It's really, really nice, but it's like a very frosty, almost lavender pink. It's a very soft pink. And then here we have Unforgettable Contrast, this white. Looks like a white in the pan. This is very similar to Anastasia's Cube in the Subculture palette. I feel that if you put this on, it has a very similar effect. Looks white in the pan, but it goes on with a little bit of a pink duochrome as well. So that's really nice. And then this shimmer right here, Mechanical Eye, that is like one of the most stunning metallics ever. Zoeva do such great shimmers, and this is just a really nice all over the lid shade, inner corner highlight. You can use it in multiple ways. So out of all of these, which one would be my favorite? And I think if I had to recommend one palette that I can really see me falling back to as like a staple in my collection, it would be the Milani. Because of the really, really excellent formula, I feel that this formula is as good as the Anastasia, but this is half the price. So that's already something right there. I really like the looks that I got out of this, even though I don't feel it's super duper cool toned, but every look I make with this is different. So I don't just get 3 looks out of this, I can make many more by combining different shades, and that's personally what I look for in an eyeshadow palette. I like it to inspire me, and even though this color scheme is completely neutral, it still inspires me. It's not bland, it has the versatility I need to make a palette work for me. And even though these 3 dark shades look perhaps very similar in the pan, I feel that each one of them does something differently when I put them on my eyes, and that is what I love when shades go that dark. So that would be my first choice. My second choice is a bit, I was umming and ahhing about this quite a bit, because as much as I like Sultry, I just think that the Zoeva palette is something a lot more unique. It's definitely a little bit more colorful. You get jewel tones in here, a little bit similarly almost to the Lorac Pro 2 actually, but it is all very cool toned, and I already like the On Taupe by Zoeva, which is a lot more bland in color scheme, you could say, but this is a really nice formula. I had no issues blending it, so I think this has to be my number 2. With number 3 going to the Sultry. Don't get me wrong, I love this eyeshadow palette. It's absolutely stunning. But again, there are just shades in here that my eye isn't really drawn to. While I like the bright pop of color you get in here, I don't really feel it goes with the rest of the color scheme. I already mentioned how I wished this was a bit more cool toned, so that you, apart from a gray, also have a cool tone transition shade. So to me, this isn't the best cool tone palette in that sense, because there's a little bit too much warmth to it. However, if you're new to cool tones and you don't know whether they will look nice on you, and you need something a little bit more in the middle that can sort of like take you from warm toned shadows to wearing cool tones a bit more, then I think that this palette will definitely be able to give you that. The formula is stunning, and it just has a couple of really, really good shades. So at the bottom for me would be the Fame palette by Colourpop. Maybe you already saw this coming, because it's just too many shades that are exactly the same. I like versatility in a palette. I think that in terms of formula, all 4 of these are very comparable, and then this one simply goes towards the bottom. So there you have it. Those are 4 recent cool toned palette releases that I wanted to discuss with you today. Let me know in a comment down below if you know of any other cool toned palettes that maybe I have overlooked, that I didn't know existed yet, or maybe that I just don't have in my collection yet, so I can do another one of these videos in the future. I would love to know. And if you would like to see more by me, then please stay tuned. I'm currently doing Everyday May, which means that I have a new video going live every Monday through Friday, but my usual schedule is 3 days a week on Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. So I really hope to see you on my next video. Have a great day. Thank you very much for watching. Bye!